We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams.
Hello, everyone. This is Tristan with Nerdette's Newsstand, finally back in the new year with Ask the Experts, and I have the amazing Matt Kindt with me. We're going to talk all things Berserker and past and DC and future, and I am definitely excited to have you here. How are you today, Matt?
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. I'm excited. So basically for this, the first thing I ask everybody is what got you into comics? Now, I know you were very young, but I want to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, I think if I had to blame anything, I would blame my brother. I had an older brother who was collecting comics, and this is back in like the 80s, like right, Dark Phoenix. Whenever she died, that was my brother. He was all into it. And I remember being like 6 years younger than him, and it was hitting him just at the right time. I think he was in high school. And I was like, oh man, I was like my cool older brother, and like, what's he into? And I'd sneak into his room and look at his comics. And so I started wanting comics of my own, and we got them from the grocery stores because we didn't have a comic shop in the little town I lived in. So I would just go there and pick up, Daredevil and G.I. Joe and whatever I could find on the racks, and then it was limited budget. So you'd find like whatever it was, some issue that like, oh, I could only get 2 comics. So then the third one I would like hide behind magazines on the magazine rack, hoping the next time we came, it would still be there, And so it was a desperate time, when I was younger. Nothing was on demand, you couldn't download stuff, this is pre-internet. So it really was, going to the comic shop was like a big deal. It was like an event when we were kids. But yeah, I'd say my brother, just reading what he was reading, and getting into that is where I started.
How did you know you wanted to do it as a career throughout your life as a fan?
Yeah, it's funny is I had an epiphany. I remember the exact moment, and I've told this story before, so it's consistent because it literally was. I remember driving home from Chicago. I wasn't driving. It was me and my brother had driven up from St. Louis to Chicago Comic-Con. This is 90s, maybe 1991. I'd have to check the year exactly, but I remember going to that show, and I was into comics, and I don't know if Image had just started then, or it was around that same time, and they had a big tent outside. And I was kind of into that, but then I was also sort of getting ready to go to college, and I was going to art school, and I was like, I really like writing and I like drawing, but I was like, I don't want to do the kind of comics I want to do. I don't think I can do. There's no market for them, and nobody's publishing that kind of stuff. Everything was just like superhero books at the time. And so I went by. Fantagraphics had a booth there, and 8-Ball issue 1 through 3 were out, and they just had them on the rack, and I picked those up. I was like, oh, this looks cool and weird. And I just remember being in the car then on the way home. My brother's driving, and I'm looking through all my comics I bought, and I started reading 8-Ball 1, and I was like, oh my God, he's doing stuff that's really great, like with genre and crime and sort of just weird, surreal stuff. And I remember just that's the light bulb going off. I was like, oh, I don't have to do superhero books. I can write in the style that I want to write in and do weird stories that I want to write. And then there's a place for me, and I'll just figure that out. And I think it was on that trip home that I was like, I'm going to do comics somehow, I'll figure it out.
Well, that's funny you mentioned not necessarily being so drawn to the superhero comics as a creator. You've done such a huge variety of work. Do you have a certain genre you kind of gravitate to, or that you like writing more than others?
Yeah, I guess I like spies and espionage. I don't know why. Like my mind just always goes there. So that's sort of my default, with some some crime, but more like spy stuff, I guess. And I think that worms its way into everything I do, whether I want it to or not, you know?
Oh yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I think the older I get, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, go for it.
The older I get, the more I'm like, I'm more conscious of genres I haven't done. And so this last couple of years, I've been purposely trying to hit genres I haven't really messed around with, you know, and I did, like, I hadn't done horror really. So I did Fear Case a couple of years ago. And I've been talking to Tyler Jenkins about we may be doing like a romance comic, you know, and my editor's like, don't do romances and no one wants a romance comic. I was like, yeah, but the way we'll do it, people will want it. They just don't know it yet.
You're working with Tyler on the new Apache delivery service also, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I know that just came out, but I had a little bit of a short review when I did I do top 5s every week, and that was one of my top 5. Can you tell everybody kind of what your inspiration going into that one was?
I'll tell you that it's the weirdest idea for a story. It came from the weirdest place, and it was so random. I was at a convention with Tyler and his wife Hillary. I think we were in Calgary. I'm pretty sure that's where it was. And then, so we're sitting at the table and we're just talking. And I think we had just finished, or we were about to be done with Black Badge. And I was asking Tyler what he wanted to do next. And every collaborator I've ever worked with, at some point, they all say that I asked the question. I was like, well, what do you want to draw? Like, what do you feel like doing? You know, and then we'll figure out what the story is based on kind of what they're in the mood to draw. I feel like you just get a better project that way, you know. Like I'm writing for myself, that's what I do. I'm like, well, what do I feel like drawing? I don't like drawing horses. I don't like drawing cars, so those are off the table. I end up drawing spy stuff. And so with Tyler, I asked him that question. I was like, and he's like, I'm in the mood to draw like jungle stuff and like late 60s era, like Vietnam war era, like helicopters and guns and jungle and that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I don't have an idea or anything. And then I swear, like later that day, the food cart was coming by with the food, and Hillary, who was sitting like 2 seats over, Tyler was in between us. She said something about there was Apache delivery service for the food coming by, because it was coming by and sometimes not and everything. And I was like, what did you say?
That's perfect.
This delivery is kind of patchy today. And I was like, that is not what I heard. But it sounded like Apache delivery service. And then so then that night at the hotel, I was like, what do I do? And I was like, oh, and then that was all that stuff was just in my head from the conversation that day. And so I typed up a pitch that night. And then the next day at the convention, I told Tyler about it. I just basically sent him a document and then verbally told him what the idea was. And then that's what happened. We ended up with that book. So
that's awesome. That's pretty funny. I was watching because you do have a YouTube channel. I'll link it so everybody can go check it out. I was watching one of your videos earlier today. Are you still writing upwards as to like 4 or 5 books a week?
No, I slowed down. I got burned out.
I wondered.
So I don't recommend doing that, you know. But there was a time where, and the thing is, it'll happen again. It's just how the schedule works, where I have projects in the works, and then I have a break where right now I have a few weeks off, but I know that I have like 4 or 5 new books all about to start, and I've got to start writing them, and so I'll be writing them all at the same time. I just can't, you know. It's my dream is to one day just have like work on 1 book at a time. That would be awesome. But it's tough. I love collaborating with everybody I've collaborated with, like Wilfredo on Bang and Tyler and David Rubin. Like all these guys, I love working with everybody I'm working with. So when we're done with one, they want to work again. I want to do something again. So I just don't say no, you know, because it's so much fun. So right. It's a lot of it's just juggling balls to make sure that they have enough to work with, you know, and just keep us all working together.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's a lot of work. Speaking of collaborations, gotta ask about Berserker. I got in on this originally, and I'm like, I love Matt Kindt. This is kind of perfect. You know, everybody loves Keanu Reeves. Is one of those people gravitate to, and I was reading. I'm like, this is such a dude comic. I don't know what other way to describe it. It's such a dude comic. How did that all come about with him?
It was Boom set it up, and I know I had done Grass Kings and was working on Black Badge. And I guess they had access to Keanu through the studio and everything. And they just asked him if he had any comic book ideas, if he ever wanted to do one. And he said, yeah, he had a pitch for one. And so he pitched them the idea. They liked it. And then they called me and they asked if I'd be interested in co-writing it with him because he hadn't written a comic before and he had this idea. And then I was like, well, what's the idea? And they kind of gave me the bare bones basics of it, like a more immortal sort of guy who can't die and all through history. And I was, and from that phone pitch, I was like, I don't know. It's like, I feel like it's, you know what I mean? It's been done. Like there's the Eternal Warrior at Valiant, which is one of the few books over there that I hadn't got my hands on that I wanted to. So it wasn't that I didn't want to do an Immortal Warrior story. It's just that I was like, what do we add to it? Like, how do you make, right, you know, what's different about it? And if you're not working with a pre-existing character, it definitely, there needs to be some twist to it, you know? But they were like, well, just have the meeting and let him pitch it because he pitches it better than we do, you know? And I was like, well, okay, I'll do that. And if anything, just to have that one meeting, it'll be fun. At least that'll be fun. So I had the meeting, flew out there, and he pitched the thing. And when he pitched it, there's a whole twist to like the second half and the ending of it that they hadn't mentioned. And I was like, well, that made all the difference. Like there's an extra bit to it that was a really good hook, I thought. You know, and he had a really good idea, crazier than I had expected, you know. And I was like, well, I'm on board for this. This sounds good, you know. And so that's kind of how it came about. Like we kind of just got along right away and started spitballing ideas, and then we've been working on it over 2 years now. It seems crazy how long it's been, but it's been a really good, fun experience.
Oh yeah, but I'm actually surprised he was that involved in the whole process.
Yeah, that's what, you know, I think people are. And that was the other reservation I had, is like, I don't want to just be like the ghostwriter for like a vanity project, you know, like I always, right. I love comics, right? Like I grew up reading them and I dedicated my whole career to making them. And so I have such a respect for the medium. I don't like seeing books where it's like a famous person putting their name on it and then it's just getting put out there so they can make a movie of it. Like I'm not interested in that, you know. And I was upfront about that too. I was like, look, I don't want to do that. and like I don't care. Like it's I don't know. Famous people are cool. It's interesting and everything, but it's not. I don't care about that stuff, you know. And I think part of it is that's why we ended up getting along and working so well together. Is it's like I don't really, that stuff doesn't matter to me. Like the story matters,
right?
You know? And so I really, going into it, I was like, I don't want this to be a thing where I'm just doing all the work and then, you know, and he's putting his name on it, and he didn't want that either. And to his credit, you know, and so it's been great because we've been both putting in a ton of ideas and spitballing things and then shaping this thing from, you know, every week for 2 years, which is like crazy, the amount of hours that I'm used to putting in. But I was impressed with the amount of effort that he and the excitement that he had towards this project.
Didn't the pandemic kind of affect how it came out also?
It affected, like we were meeting in person, and then with the pandemic, we ended up doing a lot of mostly Zoom calls, like epic long Zoom calls where we would just go over the story and spitball ideas and scenes and dialogue. Also, he was filming Matrix and John Wick back to back while we were working on it. So
my goodness,
his schedule is like so packed. You know, if you think I'm busy, he's busy. He works harder than anybody I know.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I that's pretty amazing. That is wonderful to hear though, because sometimes you don't know with those, right? Like sometimes it's just it feels like a cash grab or something towards a Netflix pitch or something, and that's really nice to hear. So, was it harder than you expected with such a big celebrity?
Yeah, I don't think it was the celebrity that made it hard. I think it's always collaboration is always hard, harder, or it's more time consuming. I don't know if it's harder. Right? In a lot of ways, it's more fun. I feel like the older I get, like I've been working in isolation in comics most of my career, over 20 years. So most of that time is spent just writing by myself, drawing by myself, and the older I've gotten, the more I've started to appreciate collaborating. I've worked with Jeff Lemire a few times, and that's always been fun because we were friends already. So we would come up with an idea and it was just sort of easy, but with Berserker, it was different in that we weren't friends already, that had to happen. Like we had to sort of figure that had to happen along the way at the same time. And you're always a little bit, it's like, I hope we get along, and I hope, what if we don't agree on a thing, so there was never a problem. It was never difficult. It ended up working out great. We have a lot in common, I think, in that it's like we just want the best final product, and we're willing to put in the hours to make it as good as it can be,
oh yeah. So and I think it shows.
Yeah, ended up being fun, It's like I make a friend along the way, which is great, and then we have fun doing the comic. It's ended up being great.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to any project, really, doesn't matter really, what it is. Do you have fixed points in your stories, or are they kind of always changing as it goes issue to issue?
Yeah, we definitely have. Everything I've ever done, it's like there's an outline, sometimes more detailed than others, but there's always like, we got to hit this beat, and an ending, and not to say that those little signposts don't change or evolve, but you have those and you work towards them, and when you get to it, then it's like, oh, okay, well that has a ripple effect that may change the ending or may change the next signpost. But you always start with a rough guide, at least. Otherwise, I never make up anything on the fly. Like improvising and all that's fun, and I do that, but that's happening in the outline,
Right.
And that's where the fun happens. That's like where the idea is born and created, and you're just making it up as you go. That's like the first draft of the first outline, and everything after that is sort of like crafting it.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And you mentioned about drawing. Do you prefer to do one or the other?
Yeah, and I think when I'm doing one for too long, I only want to do the other one. So I've been doing so much writing now. I'm like trying to write so I can get to the drawing, because I want to draw, and I'm drawing a new book now, and it's so fun because I haven't drawn one in so long that it's all I want to do. Like I don't care about any of the other writing stuff. I just want to draw it.
That's awesome. You had a little stint at DC. Well, not a little, but you had a stint at DC, doing like JLA and Suicide Squad. I think it was New 52, I want to say, during the Forever Evil. Well, how was that? How was it working for DC as compared to, Boom or Image or Bad Idea?
Yeah, it was fun. I think you have to go into that knowing what it is, and work for hire. There's different experiences. And I've had all of them. So, but I'd say generally it was fun. I don't regret it. But you go into Marvel and or DC knowing that like these are legacy characters that have been around forever, and they're on loan to you, and so you don't want to ruin them. And there's only you work within this box, and that's always been fun to me. It's like, okay, well, tell me what the rules are, tell me what the boxes I got to work in, and I'm going to work. And then the fun part is working to the very edges of it, right? It's like, here's the confines that you're in, this character, and the things you can and can't do, and like, how do you find a way to do something fun and new and different within that, And I felt like when I was in art school, it was the same thing. Like back when I was in school, the comics were looked down on, and you didn't. They weren't considered a true art form and everything. And it was like I was straight up art school, drawing, painting, fine art with capital F and an A, and so I was secretly wanting to do comics, but so I'm learning how to draw, learn how to paint, learn how to write. But I was never able to put all of that together into a thing that looked like a comic book. So it forced me to do in painting class and drawing class, sort of satisfy my urge to tell stories with writing, with words and pictures, but just do it in a different way, you know, and sort of push the boundaries of, you know, do the assignment that they asked for, but push it to the point where I'm happy with it, but it met their requirements. And I feel like Marvel and DC is the same thing. You know, it's like, well, here's what we need from you. Here's what you have to do. And it's like, okay, how do I do that and still satisfy my my need to whatever, put spies in there, or like, or, just, or like personal stories. They're some of my most personal autobiographical work has been in mainstream superhero books, you know, and it's been so, what's great about it is it's so layered and deep in there that no one will ever know, like,
right.
But I was able to put it in some of the best-selling stuff, and anyway, that to me was fun.
And you got to do those villains too, right?
Yeah, I did Solomon Grundy. Gosh, who else did I do? I did Harley Quinn, who people hated.
Sinestro, I think.
I totally get it. Yeah, I did Sinestro, and yeah, I think Harley Quinn was the one where that's the only one I ever got hate mail on. You know,
oh my gosh,
I totally get it. You know, because my take on Harley Quinn was this take I do for all of my writing, which is I try to take an idea or a concept and then do a what if. Yeah, but what if it was for real? You know, like, and you know, what would that be like in real life, really? And I don't think Harley Quinn. People didn't want that, you know. I was like, I get it. You know? I've seen the movies and she's fun. She's a good character and everything, but it's not how I approach characters or writing.
Right? Yeah, and Harley's a fun character. Sometimes people don't like seeing anything other than the fun.
Yeah, no, it's true, and that's my thing, is like I don't write fun stuff. I mean, I do things that have funny things in them or goofy things in them sometimes, but I would say generally that's not my wheelhouse.
And when it comes to Valiant, you got the ball rolling kind of during its revival, pretty much. Before talking about your work, were you a fan of the original era of Valiant?
Yeah. This is the original Valiant era. It was around the same time I was finding 8-Ball, right? And then I was sort of transitioning out of superhero books because I'm like, oh, they're all the same, and I'm sick of superhero stuff. Right. And then my brother, who still into comics like I was, you know, he was into Valiant. He started buying the Valiant books, and he was like, Harbinger #1 came out, and he's like, hey, you should read this. And I was like, I'm done with superhero books. I'm too old for that. I thought it was so mature, you know. And little did I know that I would never grow up. But but I started reading those Valiant books because of him, and really liked them. You know, like Ninjak and Harbinger and XO was one of my favorites. And so those are really the only superhero books I was reading in that era. And so yeah, when Valiant came back, I found out again that they were coming back from my brother, who was like, hey, I'm reading whatever, Valiant's back. And I was like, what? And so but now, like, I have an iPad, so I downloaded like Bloodshot and some other ones just to read them again, see what was going on. And literally like a week after I did that, the editor called me. I guess he'd read Mind MGMT, and he called me up and asked me if I wanted to write like Bloodshot 0. And I was like, this is so weird how this works out. Like, anyway, and I was like, yeah, let's give it a go. I had just come off of a bunch of DC stuff, and I'm generally positive about all the work for hire, but the other part of that, the flip side of that coin is editorial notes and different things, and what I don't mind having a box and confines and like rules that you have to follow. What I ended up not liking was when those started shifting, you know, for reasons that didn't make sense, or I didn't, you know, last minute things that would happen. And so in a way I was like, well, I don't really want, I feel like it's hurting the story. Like, tell me the rules ahead of time. I'll write it to those specifications. But if you're going to change the rules like the day before it goes to press, that's not good for the story. And I just felt like I wasn't wasn't healthy for good writing, or good storytelling. Anyway, so when I went to Valiant, Warren was my editor there, Warren Simons, and he gave me like Bloodshot Zero and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this issue as like a tryout for him to see if I like working with him, and I think he thought that was my tryout, for them to see how I am to work with. And I was like, look, I was ready to quit at him, but
the other way around.
Yeah. I was like, I was trying you out, dude. I didn't need that, but anyway, I love working with Warren. I think he's one of the smartest editors I've ever worked with. And so we're still working to this day together. So.
Do you think there's any way, like, there was a golden era, not golden, I don't know what you would want to call it, because I can't say that. That's Golden Age Comics. But, like, that period when you were working on it, like, 2011, 2012 to 2017 era, do you think there's a way for Valiant to get back to something that, because that was such a good universe?
Yeah. I think so. I don't really know. I haven't paid much attention because as like a creator, I end up following, like I can do my own thing. So I work with Dark Horse and I can do any book I want to do at this point. And so for me to work with or collaborate with another editor or in a universe or do something, to me, it's just about personalities and the people working on it. And so the stuff I'm doing with Bad Idea, I'm doing it with Bad Idea because I really like working with Warren. And I feel like he's one of those editors that helps me make the writing better. Any note he gives is in service of the story. And so I don't know how this directly ties in, but for me to go back to Valiant or to do something like that, or to it really would have to be somebody who at this point who I'm friends with already, or I know, or I trust, or like it's personality based for me, who where I end up working or the work I do. So I'm not even sure who's there now, but I would never.
I know, it feels so bad. It's changed so much.
Yeah, and it's tough, man. Comics is so tough, and like it's a hard industry, and like it's the stuff I love about it is what also makes it hard. There's total freedom and you do whatever you want, but it's also really hard to sort of make a dent and then get people to buy the books and to build a universe like that. It's just hard.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially comparing it to the big two. And I would say it's during that era, it was an amazing universe, but comparing it to the big two, to be able to do something like that again, it seems like it's going to take a lot of work. You mentioned
hard. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Let me say one more thing, because Warren, who I worked with there, his outlook, he always said this was like, he working at Valiant or doing anything that's not Marvel DC, like the stories have to be A+ stories, and the art has to be A+, because anything less, it's like, well, you'll just go get it at Marvel or DC. There has to be a reason to buy those books, and if it's not better than everything else out there, then people aren't going to bother, And I think that was the tough part. The bar was so much higher because you're providing like a third option. It's like, how are you going to get people from Marvel and DC and their favorite characters? Well, the stories have to be really, really good. That's all.
Oh, not only that, but now we've got Image and Boom and Dark Horse and a lot of AWA, a lot of these to choose from also on the indie side. So it's like, there's so many good books out right now. You don't know who's, sometimes I follow like creator. I'll follow you, Ram V, a couple of the others. Sometimes that's the best way to do it. You know what you like Jeff Lemire. I'll follow his book and his work everywhere, but you never know when you're picking up something new from an indie side unless you read a couple issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's true. And that's probably the best way to do it. Like I know as a fan of comics, I was always doing that, even back in like when it was just Marvel and DC. It's like, well, I started paying attention to writers I liked, and it's like, and the artists too. I think I switched from like, when I was younger, I was like, I just follow the art because I was like, oh, I want the coolest art, And then as I got older, I was like, oh, okay, the art's cool, but if the story's not there, then, I don't know, what do you have really? So I started following writers and the artists, and I think I still do that to this day. It's like, oh, what are they working on? Where's it at? It's great in that there's so much more diversity in like people in publishing in comics right now that, you find anything, and there's outlets everywhere, but it also makes it harder to just keep track of it sometimes.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's what I'm saying. Like I've learned to follow those type of people because I know the story is going to be good. Sometimes the art won't be perfect on the indie side, but as long as the story's there, I think that's what matters a lot. At least to me personally, I think we all have kind of our own idea when it comes to that. But you mentioned Bad Idea. You had the first book to come out from that company. What was that like?
It was fun. I honestly, Warren and Dinesh, who were running Valiant when I was there, went and started this and asked me if I wanted to be part of it. So I was like, well, yeah, it's fun working with you guys. And now we sort of have the resources to do anything we want, and work with all the artists we like working with, and come up with any story we want to come up with. And so when they launched, I had a big meeting with them, and I was like, well, here's my big folder of ideas, and then we went through and sort of cherry picked the ones that we thought would work with the publishing plan, everything. And so I've just been ticking those off the list. I think there's like 40 different ideas.
Oh my goodness.
At the time. And then of course, more ideas keep getting added. It's been fun. I've been getting to do a lot more stories that I thought I'd never get to. Some story ideas that I was like, well, I won't have time to draw it, and I don't, I only have limited bandwidth. But I've been able to get to some of those I never thought I'd get to.
That's awesome. I love Bad Idea. For a while there, it felt like everyone was saying they were going to go away, but at least we've got that now. But you mentioned Dark Horse. Is them being sold going to affect you as a writer at all?
Yeah, no, it really isn't. It's everybody that I've worked with is still in place there, and Mike's still involved, and so yeah, nothing's really changed. I have a bunch of stuff coming out this next year that we're waiting to announce. Yeah, it's full steam ahead. It's still a great place, and they're publishing a lot of good stuff this whole next year for sure.
And the last thing I really ask everyone is, and it's kind of a loaded question, not really, depends on your personality. What's your favorite character to read?
My favorite character to read, what's funny is I don't follow characters. I feel like I really don't. Going back to what we were talking about, I was like, I really follow writers and artists. And so I would say historically, if I looked at my collection of comics I own, Daredevil is probably the character that I have the most of, because I just think it's such an interesting character, and there's been so many great runs by great writers on that character. Bendis and Frank Miller, and I'm missing somebody in there. There's a third great run, but
Chip Zdarsky's recently been really good too.
Yeah. So that's the character I think he speaks to me the most, and I just love. There's something about his power set and everything that I think is interesting. It's like a great setup for great writing, because line and hearing and smelling and all that stuff, it's such a great thing. And it's what's funny is there's been so many great runs on that. I would never want to write that character.
It would be hard to live up to.
Yeah, it's what are you going to do with it? It hasn't been done better, And there's a few characters like that where it's I'm not going to touch that. I'd rather just be a fan of it,
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about Batman right now. There's a lot that's been done. Introduce us to something new, and that's why I love my indie titles, because it's always something new and something fresh. But what can everyone listening, what can they look forward to reading from you coming up pretty quick, besides I mentioned Apache delivery service?
Yeah, I can't mention anything that's coming out because they're doing a big fancy announcement in the next, probably in February. We're going to be launching a bunch of books, but yeah, pick up Apache delivery service. It's fun, and that's not fun. It's dark. It is kind of fun though. But it's an adventure, and Tyler and Hillary's art is amazing as usual. It's fully painted and everything. And so get that, and then just stay tuned for I have probably 5 new books coming out this year that are in the works.
That's awesome.
And and then the one I can mention, there's a book called Mr. Mammoth that's being published in French first. I wrote it last year, It's fully painted, and that's technically it's not out here yet. It won't be out here until next year probably, but you can look at I think you can find like art on it right now, but it's all in French. So if you read French, you can read it ahead of time.
There we go. And Berserker. Don't forget Berserker.
And Berserker is still going on. We have 4 more issues to write. We finished what did we finish? We just finished the script for 8. We have outlines for 9 through 12, and we're writing those now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. I know your time is precious, but this means a lot to me. It means a lot to the viewers. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
No problem. See you later.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.